Labor Talks, recorded at Chippewa Valley Community Television in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Hello and welcome to Labor Talks. Today's special guest is Steve Carlson. He's an organizer for the United Food and Commercial Workers Local. And Steve, welcome.
Thanks
for coming.
Good to be here.
We want to talk a little bit about you and what you do so that we can teach our audience so that unions can learn from each other, learn from our mistakes, learn from what's working right. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, currently I work for the United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, and I report to Local 1189 in St. Paul. Excuse me. For the last many years, I've worked for a number of different labor unions and progressive organizations, the Service Employees International Union. I worked on the Healthcare Reform Initiative for Citizen Action of Wisconsin, which is headquartered out of Milwaukee, but has a lot of active members here in the Chippewa Valley. And I started my organizing career after a career as a social worker and educator about 10 years ago with an organization called Wisdom of Wisconsin, which is a congregation-based community organizing institute. They have affiliates around the state, and they have one here in the Chippewa Valley. Jonah is a local affiliate of Wisdom. And at that time, we were working on a treatment instead of prison campaign. So I've done some different kinds of work, all on the sort of progressive side of the aisle over the years, and done everything from community organizing to legislative advocacy to worksite organizing drives.
A good activist.
Yeah, I think that would be a fair characterization, though I do like to make the distinction that I'm an organizer more than an activist, and I think there is a distinction.
We also want to stress that it's Citizens Action, not Citizens United.
Yes.
Someone isn't going to mix those two up. I mean, one is on our side, the other is definitely not a progressive group.
Absolutely, yeah. Citizen Action of Wisconsin, very good group.
Okay. And then, as an organizer, I know you, like we said, you work with United Food and Commercial Workers. They cover employees in our area, from Nestle to the grocery stores, to office employees as well, from what I understand, because the company that I work for, some of them are also UFCW. In this area, what types of union jobs does UFCW represent?
In the Chippewa Valley, it's primarily in the retail grocery. We represent the workers at both mega grocery stores and at, I believe, a majority of the fuel stops that Mega also has. And the two core industries that UFCW represents are retail grocery and meat packing, food processing factories. So we have a lot of factory workers, plant workers under contract.
Nestle.
Yeah, here in Chippewa Valley and over in the Twin Cities.
And you also have Mason Shoes Distribution Center, which is up in Chippewa. That's another UFCW local, that's 268. And just distribution is left here. The manufacturing side of Mason Shoes, of course, is not here anymore.
Right. And we're also starting to branch into healthcare. We represent workers at a convalescence center up in Rice Lake. And recently, actually, on the very day that Governor Walker signed the Right to Work bill into law, we won an election at a nursing home up in Luck, Wisconsin.
Excellent.
So UFCW is very interested in expanding our presence here in the Chippewa Valley to represent workers. We think every worker can benefit from a contract. And we're very actively, and it's a very aggressive a union in terms of reaching out to
growing
underpaid workers and growing.
Excellent. Yes. Excellent. And 1189 is actually headquartered out of Minneapolis, St. Paul, correct?
St. Paul.
St. Paul. But you've got locals in Superior, because I know the grocery stores up there were in there. Ashland's grocery stores, correct?
Correct.
And then, like I said, Nestle here, the mega stores here, and that's just 1189.
Correct.
Because it used to be, I think, 119A or something like that, a long time ago here in town.
Actually, Nestle is represented by 1473 in Milwaukee.
So
So
it's
we
a
have,
different United Food and Commercial, it's local.
it is.
Okay. And I know they do a lot of, they make a lot of baby formula from what I understand.
Yeah.
At that particular plant. So it was good to see when they did some more growth on it. So you've been trying to help, from what I understand, the employees at Just Local Foods here in town. They're looking the possibility of organizing and becoming part of the union. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, it's part of a bit of a larger picture for UFCW. Co-ops are, food cooperatives are really growing nationwide, and the market for that product appears to be going to be expanding, and it's going to be a boom industry in the coming years. People want local food and fresh food.
Organic foods.
Organic food and so forth. And we actually just filed for an election with a large co-op over in Minneapolis. And as the result of that, I got word that some workers were interested at Just Local Food. So we spoke to the board. Transparency is one of the values of a cooperative. And we spoke to the board and made a strong case that labor values and co-op values are very similar, in particular workers' rights and democracy in the workplace. So they were very gracious and gave us, agreed to a very open neutrality agreement, and we began to talk to workers. And at this point, what I can tell you right now is that we do have majority card sign up at this point.
Excellent.
Though we're continuing to talk to every worker that is willing to talk to us. And at some point soon here, we will either file for an election or we may approach the board about recognition on the basis of the cards alone, given that they have been very pro-union. And I really want to commend the board, which has some strong labor people on there, for extending what I think was a very gracious and open and hospitable neutrality agreement.
Makes it a lot easier to work with them.
Well, it does, and it just demonstrates that these are folks who live their values and are want to live up to their values. So that's not always the case, as you're probably aware, when it comes to an employer.
Right. Most times they're in our way.
Yeah,
When it comes to organizing.
more often than not. And so,
Especially when it's a new company or that the employees are looking to organize. You know, that's when you're going to find out, is that company on the worker's side or are they on their own pocketbook side, and they're going to fight or threaten the people with firing, which is illegal, and all other kinds of things to keep them down so that they aren't out looking to have their voices heard.
exactly. That's exactly
So-
the case.
Mega Foods here in town, as we said, is our union, and so are many of the the filling
The fuel
stations.
stops, yep.
Is there something that's holding those few back from so that all of them would be in
Are you talking about,
the gas stations?
you know, I can't tell you exactly how many, what percentage. I think it's the vast majority, and I don't know exactly.
I knew there were only a couple that weren't.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you exactly what the case is there at this point. I don't actually do member representation at this point, but certainly when you have a company that is primarily union, like Mega, it's our feeling that all the employees in that particular company deserve a
They
contract.
deserve a contract. They deserve representation.
So one of the problems is, of course, is that when you do this, you do have to go work site to work site. So it could be that there is a majority in a particular store who've been fallen victim to the propaganda that you often hear about,
Right. Right.
about unions. It could be we haven't done as good a job as we should have maybe about educating members. I don't want to say that we haven't, but you and I both know
Right.
that sometimes that happens. We get kind of in a bubble, and when we think other people know what labor unions are about. And it turns out when you start talking to workers, they really don't know.
They really don't know.
No, they don't know the benefits, and they don't know how the process works and so forth.
Because as a union member in town, for our sake, it would be so much easier to just say, okay, I know they're all union, so it doesn't matter which one I go to. And that's the case with the grocery store. It's just for the filling stations. It would be nice to know that they were all on the same side and all on the same team.
Right.
So How can we, as union brothers and sisters in solidarity, help support United Food and Commercial Workers, especially now with the organizing attempt at Just Local Foods?
Well, I want to commend the Labor Council too. As you know, when I came to the meeting last month, there was a resolution or a discussion about promoting, obviously you folks regularly, we all promote union
Correct.
products and shop at union stores. And so encouraging people to shop union is always a big help. In this particular instance, it was very valuable to have the Labor Council agree to take out an ad in the Union Herald promoting the store in the event that they decided they wanted to go union. That's going to help drive maybe new customers, maybe find actually new co-op members. And I think it's a possibility. It will kind of maybe open up an entire new customer base. There's a lot of people that might not know that Just Local Food is right there on the corner of Farwell and what is it, Washington, I believe.
So I mean, it's a matter of where we can help each other. We can hopefully bring more business into the store, like you said, and also for the union people to understand and realize that there is a place that's like that, that's close, that's union, if they're looking for their own organic or natural type foods, things that are right here. The Union Herald, as you said, is a union paper. It's a union. If they want to do an article themselves, if the co-op would like to, or the union after it gets set, would like to do an article for that paper, I know that the Union Herald would encourage that. It's a paper that's out of La Crosse, but it covers the union members in this area as well.
I think it goes all the way up to Ashland, doesn't it?
It's a good paper.
And I think that union members should go down and stop in and look what they have to offer. They have a nice variety of their meat department in particular. If you like good meat, it's local, it's grass-fed, and there's something really gratifying, and I think is consistent with labor values to support local farmers. The local economy is the future, and it makes a big difference when you can buy something that was raised 30, 40 miles from here rather than shipped from California. Or Texas.
Happy cows in California.
Right.
What's wrong with happy cows in Wisconsin?
Yeah, we're the dairy state, you know, and the beef state. We don't need to rely on out of state.
Stuff.
No.
You know, and with that in mind, the trickle-down theory, you know, as I said, doesn't work. And in my estimation, it doesn't work.
No, I agree with you there.
We need to get the money in the pocketbooks of local people, local working class people. Then they take that money and they spend it in the economy, and it keeps jobs here, not in Chicago or not in, like we said, California. I grew up on a dairy farm, and it always upset me when I see these things for happy California cows.
Right.
When we've got a lot of good stuff right here. So it's with gratification that I can also say that this year is the first year in the last several where Wisconsin has now overstepped California in dairy production, which is as it should be. But I was told it's because of the droughts in California and the fires in California. Not that we wish that on them, of course, but I'd like to see Wisconsin businesses being supported.
And I'd like to see the return of family farming.
Yes.
I grew up in a little town in southeastern Minnesota, agricultural village, and all my aunts and uncles had farms, and my grandparents, and I spent my youth on farms. And
it's a good place to raise your kids and teach them the value and ethics of work.
And I think that there's a lot of aligning values between farmers and laborers.
Yes.
That's why we have in Minnesota the Democratic Farmer Labor Party.
And I've already talked to them here in Wisconsin. We need to get that done over here.
Yeah, we need to bring those two back together and stand together against our sort of our common opponents and adversaries.
When I drive down the road in the community that I grew up in, and you don't see any family farms that are still viable. All the barns are down. They can't fix them up because they get taxed on improvements. The only farms you really see are these big corporate farms.
Yeah.
And to me, that's so sad because it was a wonderful place to grow up. And again, economy in Wisconsin versus the economy somewhere else.
Right. It was a wonderful place to spend time as a kid. It really was.
One of the things that I've been stressing lately is the disconnect between the people that are retiring who retired with a contract that was done years ago, so they had great benefits and everything, and they're retiring with this. We don't want to lose their voice because they're the ones who fought for all the benefits that we have. And then there's the young people coming in, that we hope are coming in, that don't think the unions are needed anymore, that what's the union going to do for me? What would you recommend, or what do you see United Food and Commercial Workers doing to keep those two sides involved?
That, I think, is an excellent question. I know that when our political arm gets behind a candidate that stands for working families and working people, then we will call on retirees to try to help with get out the vote efforts so that we can try to elect local, statewide, even federal officials that are going to stand up for working families. So that's one way that we do engage retirees. We do have sort of a smallish group that we can call upon in the event that we're going to run maybe an informational picket, other kinds of community organizing actions, might be a press conference to raise the minimum wage. Over here, labor was pretty involved. Multiple unions were involved in the effort to try to convince our governor to take the Medicaid money so we can expand public health insurance for underpaid workers and low-income families. But I think, we were talking a little bit before the interview started, I think it would be a great idea to really build a stronger speakers bureau through our labor temples and have people available, whether it's from UFCW or Ask Me or whatever, members of the council, available to go out and talk to some classrooms. When kids get into high school, they're certainly more than able to understand the material. And I think a lot of people simply don't know really what unions are, what they do, and the benefits of them. There's been such a vicious propaganda campaign for decades about labor, and we have not really had the resources or the right response to counter that. And I think that that would be a good opportunity for retirees to engage younger people, not only about what labor stands for, but they can recount personally. For instance, when I get to the point, which as you can tell by looking at me, I'm not too far away from being a retiree, I would love to go in and talk about how when I was a kid, if my dad had not been a member of the bakery and confectionery workers in Winona, we wouldn't have had health insurance in our family. And we wouldn't probably, with 5 kids in the family, probably not have been able to afford to own our own home. So it was the union that gave us that. And maybe young people today think everybody gets it into their head that the world is their oyster and someday they can be president or CEO. Well, the fact of the matter is that's just plain not true. No. Some people are going to end up in regular jobs because we have to have people in average jobs. And those people deserve to make a good living.
And they deserve respect.
Deserve some respect and some dignity in the workplace and a voice in the workplace.
It used to be, again, our age group and older, it used to be the kids would have pride coming out of school saying, I've got a job already lined up over here and I'm going to be a member, card-carrying member of this local. Mm-hmm. You know, and then they switched to let's everybody go to school. And so they put all these kids through school, and a lot of them went to school for something. They aren't in that job that they went to school for. And now you got all these baby boomers retiring, and we don't have anybody to step into those trade positions or the skilled positions that need workers. Mm-hmm. So if we passed a law that said labor history is supposed to be taught in schools. Whether it's being done, it's sad to say that we don't think it's being done the way that we would like to see it. And that would be, I think, too, a great program for us to be invited into that labor history class. Who better to talk about labor history than someone who's been through it?
Exactly.
And then the kids could then turn around and say, oh, I know what labor is now. And maybe they would then respect it again and look to, I'm going to go to school for this. You know, I know, and a lot of them that's that me generation that believes that I want that money for myself. I don't necessarily want to work to get it, but I want that money. But this way they could go into a job that's got good money and a good way for them to raise their families, be able to provide their own homes and schooling for their own kids.
Well, and that's, a union is a difference between being able to make a good living and having a career in a grocery store and not. Excuse me. From talking to a number of workers in retail around here, I can tell you that the majority of the workers are there long enough to look for a different job because the pay is poor, the benefits are unaffordable. One of the biggest problems in contemporary retail, which is one of the biggest growing sectors in the country, is inconsistent work schedules. A contract isn't always about wages. It's often about working conditions, wages, benefits, and working conditions. If you're working, for example, at Walmart, and you can only get 28 hours a week because the company policy is to keep people below the line where they would have to offer a health insurance plan, and you have an inconsistent schedule, it makes it almost impossible to get even a second job. So there's just so much value in having a union in your workplace beyond just a raise. And don't get me wrong, that's a big part of it too, is getting paid what you're worth and what your value is to that employer. But it can mean everything from workplace safety issues, and just the sense that you have a collective voice that gets to bargain and negotiate for how things go at the workplace. Where they can speak for
themselves instead of being slaves.
Exactly. Instead of always just being at the whim or at the mercy of managers and bosses. Yeah.
My husband is a machinist, and it's an occupation that unfortunately is one of the things that gets shipped out of overseas. Someplace else can manufacture that for so much cheaper. And when he goes for an interview, it's always more important for him to look at what are the benefits that job is going to provide. I'll have him take $1 or less an hour if he's got the benefits to back it up.
Sure.
And happy employees are productive employees. So, and you're right, I mean, we've got a lot of kids going to school that are working in the grocery stores. And they're still putting themselves through school, and it's a way, again, for them to work their way up. They've got all these debts with school loans, and that who knows how long it's going to take these kids to pay those bills back.
Exactly.
But if they can get a good paying job while they're working, while they're going to school, they're not going to come out with that being 10 steps behind.
Yeah. No, that's a huge problem for kids these days, and I think it's a strong argument for raising the minimum wage or having a contract at a work site. The idea that a lot of these low-wage jobs are for kids and so we don't need to worry about wages. When you look at the average amount of student loan debt the average college graduate has, it's somewhere in the $30,000 to $35,000 range. That's the average. And the idea that your labor is somehow less valuable because you're 15 or 16 or 17 years old. My dad was driving a tractor and running the farm when he was 13. His labor was as valuable as somebody who was 23 or 33.
Correct.
So people have to get it in their head that their labor is valuable and that there is no wealth without labor. Abraham Lincoln said that first. Don't take my word for it.
The economy wouldn't work if we didn't have the street sweepers and the and the people putting the food on the shelves and the people that clean up behind us, and we need every single part of that to make everything work.
You bet. The professional class does not have their careers unless there are laborers
below
doing all that other work, making the things they
doing
need.
The base.
Yeah, making all the things they need to do their job and pitching in and creating the society that gives them the platform to have their careers. So everybody should be on the side of labor.
And it's not the professional people that are going to put the money in the economy to build our economy back up. It's that base.
Sure.
It's the working class that are going to put the money in their pockets. They'll go out and spend the money, which will create more jobs and keep the jobs here.
Absolutely.
We need to manufacture here versus overseas. Now, right-to-work legislation, obviously our lovely governor has signed into law and will go into effect as contracts come up for renewal. Do you see that being a huge problem with the United Food and Commercial Workers?
Maybe less so than some other unions. We already have a large membership in many right-to-work states like Texas and Tennessee. So we have some experience with that. That said, there is the anticipation that we will lose some membership. There are going to be a certain number of of members who decide they don't want to pay their dues anymore. But the answer to that is to begin to do more internal organizing, and that means educating people about what they have,
Right.
why they need to stay engaged to keep it. And then we're also, and Working America through the AFL-CIO is doing this as well. They're working up what they call a Union Plus program, where participating businesses, and this is one example of where sort of commerce and business and labor can find real common ground. We're currently making up a list of statewide and local Chippewa Valley area businesses who will give a discount to UFCW members. And it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. We can help drive customers to maybe an oil change place or some other kind of business, AT&T cellular service or those kinds of things. And in return, those members get some value by being members beyond what they're getting as, in terms of the workplace.
That's our program for today. I want to thank you, Steve, for coming, being part of our show today. We couldn't have it without that union voice.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And I also want to say thanks to the people here at the station, behind the cameras, in production. They're the people that are giving the unions a voice today. We don't have that voice in the other media. We don't have it in the newspapers. We don't have it on the regular news stations because they're not hearing what we have to say. So we appreciate that here. This station also would love to have any type of volunteers, or if you're doing any kind of fundraising. They've lost a lot of their funding, obviously, under this same governor that's throttling the life out of the rest of Wisconsin. So they're looking for that as well. A final note, Labor Talks is on channel 993 twice weekly. You can also find it with your favorite search engines like Google. If you go on and just pull up Labor Talks, the YouTube videos will come up, and you can look at all of the different ones. Like, let's say you want to see Steve's interview, or if you want to see my interview from almost a year ago. So it's interesting to see those different things. For the Labor Council itself, I just want to make sure people realize that in January all seats are up. We are looking for active delegates from all the different locals. And you have to be an active delegate for at least 60 days in order to be able to run for a position, but all positions are open, and we'll be doing interviews, elections in January. So we want to thank CBC TV. That's one of the ways you're going to find it online too, is from CBC TV or Labor Talks. But thank you for being here today.
Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cbctv.org.